What's up, guys? I got a very special guest here today. So I got Ian King from Dig Deeper Dog Training. And Ian and I have been working together for quite some time, a little bit over a year now. And this is a long time coming, this interview. So we've been talking about doing this a long time. And I'm excited to have you here, man. So Ian, why don't you just kind of kick it off? Tell everyone a little bit about you and how you got started as a trainer.
Oh, man. So, 10 years ago, I just kind of found the crafts. A lady came out and she helped me with my Jack Russell Terrier, who's since passed on. But, so that tells you how long I've been doing this. And so anyways, I eventually went and asked her if I could come learn from her. And she said, yeah, come on out. And that kind of kicked off the decade of me just learning. And like I call it my amateur career, where I pretty much didn't charge anything. And I just went out and worked and tried to learn and get as much knowledge as I could and get as good at my craft. And then somewhere along the way, I got a family, and when the family came along, the responsibilities came with it. So I upped the game there, and that's when we really went into business. And then I was bitching to one of my friends, or both of our friends, Ashley, one morning. I was saying, I'm so sick of this. I make, $4 or $5 grand a month, but like I get to the end of the month, and between rent and food and everything, it's done, right? And it's so defeating to go from a place where you couldn't find $200 to now all of a sudden you can magically make up a couple $1,000s in a month, and yet you're right back at the place wwhere it's all getting taken. So you feel right back at zero. So anyways, I reached out to you, contacted you. You started getting me a ton of leads, dealing with my nonsense, letting me complain and moan and stuff. And we got through it. We're alive a year later, which, as I understand it, is a big deal in the business world, because apparently most businesses don't survive the first year.
100%. Yeah.
Well, I mean, but hey, it's my first year with you, but you get what I mean. Like,
yeah, totally.
But so actually being competitive and going and being in business, it was a fun go around. So anyways, that's how I kind of got here. And that's how we started working together, and it's been just wonderful ever since.
Cool, man. But let's go back a little bit. So I'm just curious, because I love this part of your story. So you got started in training because you needed dog training help. You had somebody come out to help you. You paid them, and then you were just kind of like fell in love with it on the spot, or like what happened there?
No, that's not what happened at all. No, this great patient lady, much more than me, named Megan Kate, came out, and my parents hired this lady as a dog trainer. I did not know what a dog trainer was. I thought I was I thought that I had some talent with animals, but I didn't know what exactly that meant. And so actually, when this lady came out, I was not the kindest individual, because I was threatened by her. I was like, wait a minute, who is she? Like, how can she know more than me about this thing? Because I didn't realize that dogs and animals in general, or anything in life, is a craft. And the more time you have in that craft and the more experience, right? You can't really put passion against experience. Experience will win every day of the week, right? And so she was light years ahead of me. I had not a basic understanding of what dog training was, and yet she was a real professional and worked in zoos and had a behaviorist degree and all these things. So anyways, I wasn't very nice to her, and she dealt with me, and I kind of humbled myself over the next couple months, and I reached out to her and said, hey, look, I don't know if you remember me, but could I come learn from you? And she said yes. And I came out, and I was still a major pain in the ass, always questioning things, always getting in trouble and stuff. But she dealt with me, she tolerated me. And because of that, I'm still here, and I'm still in this industry. So I owe her a lot of things, and I will extend that kindness and that patience to anybody that I help going forward, because I feel that that's necessary. But
well, what's so cool about that is that I actually remember talking to you. It must have been a couple months ago now, where you had a client, and there was almost like if I remember correctly, there was a similar situation with a guy who kind of was very similar to the way that you were, where he was questioning everything. And you were telling me, you were like, it was almost kind of frustrating me, but I realized in real time that like, that's who I was. And so you need to have like a lot of empathy for that guy during that consultation.
I almost feel like I don't have the right to get frustrated with an individual like that. Like I put so many people through so much that like I now owe it to the universe, not to deal with it necessarily, but to like help that individual get where they need to be, because someone once was patient with me and didn't tell me to get the hell out of their studio. So, it really goes to show though how, you know, if you treat someone, it can imprint them further on in their life, and they may go on and treat people differently by how you treated them.
Yeah, and I think that this is a superpower that you can have in your business, which is remembering where you were at a certain point in your life and how, you know, you didn't have the knowledge. And so when people come to you and they don't have that knowledge, to treat them with empathy and not be like, how does this person not get this? How is this not clicking with them? Right. Because I can see that where take any industry, you know, the industry I'm in, the industry that you're in, and it's easy to get frustrated with people when they don't do things that you're asking them, even though you know it's going to be best for them and their dog, but they just don't have the repetitions yet. They just don't have the knowledge and the life experience to realize that. And so you kind of need to meet people where they are. And sometimes what that means is, you know, waiting for them to kind of come along and get the picture a little bit.
Well, I think the meeting people where they are thing is just a lesson you have to learn on many levels in life. I mean, it's something I'm going through right now with trainers that come to me and ask me kind of like, well, how did you get to this point? How did you do this? And I try to tell them, and it's kind of hard to relate to them at this point, what I'm trying to express, because they haven't pitched high ticket sales, they haven't gone out and done these things, so for them it seems like impossible. But it's funny how quickly impossible can become your everyday reality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And so I mean, I see that with my clients as well, where it's like, you know, I put myself in the shoes of where I was a decade ago, and when I was first starting to work with like a marketing agency or running my first Google Ads campaign, and think about every little thing I didn't know and every single question. And sometimes it's easy to get frustrated and go, well, you know, that seems like second nature now. But when somebody's doing something for the first time, you know, they just don't know what they don't know. And so you need to kind of put yourself back in those shoes. And that can be a difficult thing to do, because that can almost feel like a lifetime ago. And you can almost, in some ways, I feel like a different person than I was 10 years ago.
I feel like a different person I was a year ago.
Yeah.
I mean, like you know, a year ago I was pitching $600 programs, $1,200 programs, and now I've gone to $3,000 programs in my career. I've done it,
Yeah.
you know, and so that was completely unrealistic. When I first started out, my goal was to get $1,000 for a program, and I did that. You know, it took me a while, but I did it. And that kind of broke the ceiling. But really, you know, how much you charge and how much you can deliver, you have to be able to deliver if you're pitching high ticket things. That you owe that to the industry, and you owe that to the people that you're taking on as people who are asking you for help. But you know, if you're really good at this and you're ready to rock, you should be asking for what you're worth, because both sides are going to benefit from it more. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the hardest thing if you're an entrepreneur that comes from a background where you've had a job or you've come up in middle class or something like that, is to get your head around the fact that people don't view money the same way you do, right? Mm-hmm. Like, so you view $1,000 as an astronomical amount of money, but there's someone who will go spend that on a night out, or, you know, something like that. So it's just, you have to kind of reframe what's possible, or you're going to be hesitant and you're going to be unconfident in asking for it. Mm-hmm. And if you don't ask for it, you're not going to get it, right? Like, life will pay what you ask for it, but you got to be willing to ask. And that's the biggest problem. I see a lot of great people, I mean, wonderful souls that really do genuinely want to help people. And yet what's funny is that the people who are able to kind of, and it sounds bad, but the people that are able to kind of put that aside and just be like, this is business, they tend to be able to sell or pitch the high ticket offers a little bit easier, because they don't have as much emotional attachment to it. Mm-hmm. It's the people who genuinely care that struggle with pitching those high ticket offers, because they don't want to rip anybody off.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that a lot of people struggle with it because of their upbringing and like their socioeconomic status, like their parents' socioeconomic status, and the people, you know, their grandparents, and so on and so forth. And if you look at yourself, you know, I've had this conversation with many people, you know, where if you didn't grow up with a lot, and it comes time to raise your prices, like, you know, it's going to be difficult, right? It's going to be a mindset issue surrounding that, where you're like, think about when you were a little kid and your parents like having to pay for something that was $1,000 and seeing like they would never pay for that. So why would other people pay for this? Or I don't have have a ton, so I would never pay for something for $2,000 like this. Why would somebody else? So the thing is like we need to change that mindset and realize that like there are people out there who really value this service and really value the relationship with their dog. And we've talked a lot about this, Ian. Like, you said to me a couple of weeks ago that like money really is a mindset. So do me a favor, talk a little bit more about that and like what that realization was all about for you.
Well, I mean, I kind of equate it to going to the gym. Like, you don't want to go and try to lift super heavy your first day if you've never been in the gym and have no idea what you're doing, right?
Yep.
So there's certain skill sets that are required to go out and get someone to say yes to a high ticket offer. You need to have some sales skills. You need to have some, ideally, authentic ability to connect with a person, right? Like actually make someone feel that you care about them, because you should. Just understanding who and where you're asking somebody something. Like, you got to understand the environment. I know a lot of people may not agree with me there, and I do agree. Don't assume anything, right? But offer it. But like, you got to use some common sense when you're going out to these places. More so on the side of not beating yourself up when you get a no. So if you go out to an environment and you kind of notice it's not the nicest neighborhood, and like that's possibly an inkling that maybe they're not going to be able to afford a $3,000, $4,000 program, right? And you get a no from that person, or you get a maybe from that person, you leave that situation. Well, if you're doing this 3 or 4 times in a day, it can get really hard on your soul, and you can start looking at yourself and being like, crap, man, no one wants what I have or anything. Well, sometimes you're just pitching to the wrong person, right? And so that to me was a big realization, where it's like, okay, look, this isn't a win-loss ratio thing. This is find the right people that we can help and show them that we can help them, or sell them on the idea that we can help them, and then do so, right? Deliver what we said we would do. But in my experience, if someone has the money and they've called you and contacted you, most people are contacting you. And if you know how to start that conversation and guide them along, they're going to want what you have, so long as you can really deliver on what they're after, right?
Yeah.
And that's the big thing, is identifying what it is they're after, because sometimes they don't even know. So you have to dig into it a little bit. And that's another part of the game.
Yeah, that's a huge part of it, right? It's being a really good listener, and being a really good listener includes asking the right questions so you are given the opportunity to listen, right? Just going there and expecting people to spill their guts to you and tell you every little thing that's like their biggest fears in their life or their biggest goals. They may be embarrassed about that stuff. So sometimes we need to kind of pry it out of them. So I think that go ahead.
I just want to tell you this story that's in my head, because it has exactly to do with this. There was a point where I was working at an Arby's about like 7 years ago, right? And I'm making sandwiches, and this guy right next to me, he starts talking to me about dog training. And I told him, well, you could get $500 just to teach a dog not to pull on leash. Back then, that was big money to me. And he said to me, he looked at me, he goes, I wouldn't pay that for that. And I looked at him and I said, no offense, you're not exactly my target market. You see what I'm saying? Like, you have to know who you're asking. And like that guy was like if I would have took what he said on face value, him being like, well, that I wouldn't pay that. Well, yeah, of course you wouldn't pay that, because you don't have $500 to, you see what I'm saying? But like in that moment, I questioned whether that guy was right. Right? Like, I was like, man, because it wasn't real to me. I hadn't gone out there and pitched $500 to solve that problem. Now I have many times over. And if anyone wants to argue with me, I can be like, no, dude, I do this every day. But like then, and so what I'm saying is, if you're in a place where you haven't done those things yet, it can be very, very hard not to take in others' opinions that are not really that built up themselves, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and we're going to talk some more about sales here. I really want to get your opinion on things and get you to dive deep into that. But I think that we'll go a little bit more into that in a second here. But I think that also, just before I forget, you're exactly right. I mean, it's not everybody is going to buy from you as well, right? Like, that's just the fact of the matter. Is like, some people don't place as high of a value on something, and they think that they have conceptually, they think that like dog training should cost $50, right? And they just don't know. And then you realize that, and you're like, hey, this person just wasn't for me. But I think that that's a part of sales that a lot of people need to kind of get their head around is that, if you get a couple no's, that doesn't mean that the whole thing needs to be thrown out. It's not like you need to throw the baby out with the bathwater. It's like you may just be trying to sell to the wrong people. And that's a really, really big part of this.
Yeah, but like something you said to me a long time ago, you said, Ian, you always seem to look inward. Like when something's going wrong, you always seem to look at like what you can control. And I think that that's a strength, but with most our strengths come a weakness, right? And sometimes when you look inward, you're always blaming yourself for things that are out of your control. Mm-hmm. And like you said, some people are not going to buy from you. Some people just don't have the right chemistry to work with you, even if they could buy from you. Yeah. That's something I learned, this year too. Like, look, there are many people that will give you money, but if you don't feel that it's right, you don't feel that you guys can do good work together, I personally will walk away, because I want to put out good voices in my community, good dogs. I want to put out, it's not a product to me, but I want to put out good work is what I should say.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's definitely it. I mean, there's somebody out there for everybody, right? So you may just not be the best fit for them. So, I think you need to kind of check yourself a little bit. If you find yourself always saying, well, I just wasn't the right fit for them, I wasn't the right fit for them. Right. And I think you need to realize, like, how do we become the right fit for more people?
There's balance in everything.
Right? Yeah, exactly. But I think that another part of this is also, a good exercise that I always recommend to everybody is first off, don't just price your programs off of what other people are doing, because that's going to be problematic, because then all of a sudden you can be like, I'm too expensive, I need to lower my prices. And you always get just cheaper and cheaper, and it's a race to the bottom, and you're never going to be the cheapest person in the market. You never want to be the cheapest person in the market. It's not a sustainable approach to your business, where you're going to get burned out and you're going to be charging $25 a lesson. It'll never work. But what I would tell you is, like, what I would recommend is going out there and seeing what, like, the heavy hitters in the marketplace are doing, right? Because if you think, like, I can't sell dog training for $2,000, $3,000, more than likely, if you look around, you call some businesses, you're going to find people that are charging that. And that's good news. That's really good news, because if other people are doing it, that means you can do it as well.
Well, the thing is you'll actually become just mind boggled when you realize, I had a trainer message me the other day that there is a person who has a dog. They've put $41,000, you heard that, $41,000 of training into the dog, and they have no intention of keeping it.
Could have sent their dog to college for a year.
Yeah, but no intention of keeping the dog. Did you catch that part?
Yeah, that's ridiculous, man.
Yeah. So what I'm saying to people is, like, for you, it's a huge decision to go spend $100 at dinner. For some of these people, they'll drop 40, 50K and not even think about it. You know what I mean? And so you have to realize, like, who you're dealing with and who you're talking to is the more of what I'm trying to get at. But yeah, man, no, it's a game. There's several games in entrepreneurship, right? Like, you have to have the people game, you have to have the dog game, you have to have the sales game, you have to have the people doing the books, and so you got to be a master of all this stuff.
Of all of that, yeah. But hey, so I want to take it back a little bit here. So I always love this story, because I feel like this epitomizes our relationship so many times over.
You have so many, I don't even know which one you're talking about.
Well, I was going to say, when we first started, we got introduced by Ashley, or technically Ashley and Jason, her brother as well. And so shout out to Ashley and Jason, based out of Connecticut, but they connected us. We did our first sales call together. And at the end of that, you said, listen, man, I really want to work with you, but I don't have a dollar to my name right now, but I'll be back in a couple of days and I'll be ready to go. And I was like, I've heard this before. We'll see, like, I'll believe it when I see it, type of thing. But sure enough, you were able to go out and really just, find some clients, find a way to make some money. And so that's kind of like a superpower that I've found that you really do have. And so it really is a mindset.
I'm kind of learning something new here, because I thought you believed me the whole time. I thought you believed I was really gonna go get it.
Well, now I do. Yeah, now I do, because now when you say that,
when I got off the phone with you, I was like, yeah, this guy probably has no doubt. That's hilarious. So I learned something new there. But no, the thing is you just get in a flow, right? And, like, when you're in that flow, you're unstoppable. The problem with that flow is it can get cut off, and then you really start questioning and doubting yourself. So you have to be able to, like, get past that mental game and be like, okay, this happens the same way every time. Boom, high, a little bit of low, boom, high, a little bit of low, right?
Mhm.
So like you have to kind of, you just learn. You learn to get over that. You learn not to question things when things are slow. You know a good week is coming. You know that your Google account's about to get flooded with leads. It's gonna happen. It always does, right? But the thing about being an entrepreneur is that when you're first getting that plane in the sky, there might be a month where, you know, rent's due and you get it on the 29th and it was due on the 30th. And there might be a month where the ads are due and you don't know where it's coming from and you find it 3 days before it's due. Like, that is part of the game, you know? And so like, although I preach and love entrepreneurship, I love being a business owner, I do tell people openly, it's not for everybody, because you do have to have some level of risk tolerance. You have to have a decent level of risk tolerance, because it will eat you alive if you don't. If you don't have the ability to disassociate and just kind of go into play chess mode, that's what I call it. Like when I have a day like that, I'm like, all right, let's play chess. Like, you know, it's game, you know.
Yeah. And self-belief is a big part of it, right? Like,
huge.
What I always tell people on all the sales calls is like, I know we can get you leads. I know you're going to get leads. The question is, do you believe in yourself enough to be like, if I get these leads coming in, that I can set consultations and make sales? And we can teach people, and we do that all the time. We do a ton of sales coaching. But the thing is like, there needs to be a certain level of self-belief there. And I had somebody say that to me not too long on the sales call. They were like, I know you can get them. I've seen you deliver results for other people. I just am not sure that I'm convinced I can do it. And turns out we ended up signing them up, and now they're booking all the way out through December. You know, it's November now, December into January with board and trains and stuff like that. But the thing is like, you need to, as an entrepreneur, believe in yourself and bet on yourself, because you are the horse in this race.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I have a theory, and I don't mean to offend anybody with it, but imposter syndrome is rampant in the dog training industry. I mean, it's like cancer in the dog training industry. A lot of people struggle with it. I have never been someone who struggled with that. I had the exact opposite problem. I had the Dunning-Kruger effect, which was I thought I was way, way better than what I was when I first started. And no one could really talk reason to me, which again, thank you to my patient mentors in the beginning. But you know, the thing is like, I truly believe that having a false sense of confidence is better for starting a business or an entrepreneur than having imposter syndrome. Most of the people I've seen with imposter syndrome have struggled on the side of business to get over the hump of asking for what they're worth and really going out there and slaying it, because like you said, that self-belief factor is so huge. When you doubt yourself, man, it's a big factor. And I tell people all the time, you know, I spent most of my 20s not being able to find $200. Now I can go out and find $5,000 in a day if I have to. And the only difference is what I believe I can do and who I'm talking to, right? Like, so it really is hugely a mindset issue. Now, I don't want to discredit understanding sales and understanding people and the skill that's developed through repetition of getting in front of people and doing all those uncomfortable calls and doing all those uncomfortable consultations. That you can't shortcut that. Like those things are things you have to earn. So like, you know, you can watch all the sales videos you want. You can, you know, watch all the motivational videos until you're willing to actually call someone, set up a consultation, get in front of them and pitch them your offer over and over and over again. It's hard to develop that skill and belief.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think fear plays a big role in the whole imposter syndrome thing, right? Of course. But I just thought about this while you were saying, like, I remember a couple of years ago watching, I don't know if anyone who's watching this has seen this, but there was that documentary that was made on the Chicago Bulls in the 1990s, The Last Dance. And it really follows around Michael Jordan, who in the sports world, right, is like the epitome of success and the epitome of greatness, right? And they interviewed him, they were asking him about fear, and they were asking about like all the times that you would take the last shot in the game. And what if you missed it? You know, what if you made it? What if you missed it? And he said, why would I possibly worry about something that has never happened yet? And I was like, that is such a powerful thing, because so many of us, myself included, you know, you can focus so much on like, what if I do this and it doesn't work? What if I fall flat on my face? And it's like, you know, what if it works? What if it produces something even better than what you could have possibly, you know, thought of in the beginning?
See, so that's where it's almost better if you don't know, right? So like when I started dog training, I was just a kid in my parents' house. I saw this dude living with wolves, and I said, "Huh, that's a good idea." And so like I wanted to do what I'm doing for over a decade, and for over
Yeah.
a decade, I could not figure out how to do it. I didn't understand that people in my community didn't want to bring me in and let me be wise to the game. So I had to kind of earn my stripes, you know. And so I just really resonate with that person who's starting out and lacks that self-belief. I feel for that individual because it's a rough game out here, you know, and not a lot of people are willing to share their secrets. I don't have an issue sharing anything, but I've always been kind of open that way. And like I said, my heart's still with the person that's just trying to come up and start this thing because it's passion for me before business, really. But I've learned the business side, and you know this about me.
Absolutely.
You've had to have talks with me when I come back to you and tell you that a 7-session program turned into a 14-session program and stuff of these natures.
Yeah. But to anybody who's listening to this right now, like if you feel like you're struggling with fear, a fear of getting started, fear of charging enough money, fear of imposter syndrome, like any of that, the only way that you're going to get over that is like in the you know, in like the medical world, it's exposure therapy, right? Like clinical psychologists, they don't tell you to, you know, so like you have that fear, oh, stay away from that, avoid that like the plague, right? Like you need to face your fears at a certain point and like do things that put you out of your comfort zone. Because once you get those reps in and you start realizing like, hey, I can slay this dragon, or there isn't really a monster on the other side of this door. You know, once you do that enough times, you're going to move past that fear. Once you charge $1,000 for a program, you're going to realize like, wow, people paid for this, right? So there's people out there charging $1,500. Maybe I can charge that. And so like, it just starts with taking that first step forward, giving yourself permission to fail as well. If it doesn't work, you can always go back. You can always go back. But the thing is, if you just don't ever do it, you never try, you'll never know.
So coming from a fighter's background, I can tell you that when I first started doing in-person consultations with you and the ads, that I saw things very much from a win-loss ratio. I saw it as if I went out there, I either won or I lost, and that was very hard psychologically. And so I think that what's trying to be obtained when you're doing pure exposure of trying to get over something, in the dog world, sometimes we call it flooding, is you're trying to gain different perspective of the thing that you're afraid of, right? And so sometimes pure exposure can do that. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it never does. You just never get over it, right? It's rare, but it does happen. Sometimes for me, what took off the edge about getting in front of people, because boy, did I struggle. I struggled greatly with anxiety with first sessions and consultations. And it was one sentence I heard from Alex Ramosi. He said, if you enter every negotiation trying to help, you always win. So that made it to where 100% of the time I won, right? If I went out there, I gave it my best. I really tried to help these individuals. And where sales comes in, I think this is kind of confusing, is people think sales is this magic power of convincing people to do something they don't want to do. That's not what this is at all. What it is that if you run into an objection, someone thinks they don't have enough money. Okay, well, we can work out a payment plan. Someone thinks that their partner is going to have a huge issue with it. Okay, well, what do you think they're going to say about this? Like, sales is working through issues that are in the way of getting people what they want, in my opinion.
That's beautifully said.
Yeah. So like for me, I've had a lot of people be like, why are you putting so much time into one of my best friends? Why are you putting so much time into the sales stuff kind of thing? Well, because it's helpful to understand quickly how to respond when there's only so many objections you can face, right? The spouse, money, time, I don't know what else off the top of my head. Those are the main ones I can think of.
Pretty much it. Pretty much money too, 90% of the time.
Yeah, it's money. It comes down to money or time generally, right?
Yeah.
So, learning how to work through those things, if people really want what you have, or finding out that they don't actually want what you have, and getting to know is fine, right? Like someone saying, hey, no, you're just not for me, that's fine. But like leaving it on the table, walking away and wondering if there was more we could do to help that individual, that doesn't feel good. So that to me, that's what I use sales for. It's not some witchcraft power to try to convince people to give me their money that don't want to give me their money. It's to help people obtain the skills that they're after and to try to find a solution if there is a problem to getting those.
Yeah, that's perfectly said. I mean, I think that a lot of people have there's negative connotations out there about sales because people think of you know, apologize if anyone here is a used car salesman, but that's the first thing that, people think of is used car salesman trying to sell them something they don't actually need, a car that's going to break down a half mile down the road and has all these
con
problems.
artist is what they're talking about.
Yeah, snake oil salesman, right? There's all these terms for them. Yeah. But the thing is like that's not what we're doing here, right? No. There's a saying that I try and really live by when it comes to sales, and it's this transaction will help me momentarily, but help them for a lifetime. And so that's the thing that I always try and preach to all of my clients is think about this. Like, yeah, they may be paying you $3,000 now, but they're going to learn this skill for this that they're going to have with this dog, right? That's going to, God willing, live for another 10, 12 years, right? And then the next dog as well, right? Maybe they get a second dog like in another couple of years, right? So this is a real skill set that you're transferring to people. And so it's not like the mindset shouldn't be like, oh my gosh, I just made $2,500. Like, I can't believe someone paid me that. It's like, no, you're changing their life and giving them a real skill that they didn't have before. And they needed to, have somebody teach this to them.
Yeah. I mean, what is going from a dog who yanks you down the street to a dog that can walk wonderfully for the rest of its life worth? What is going from a dog who rushes out of the door and has been hit by a car and you watch this dog almost die and now you don't have to do that anymore because you can call your dog back? Like, what are those things worth, right? They're priceless. Yeah. So if you can really deliver those things, then yeah, you can charge a pretty heavy ticket, right? It's where we get into the issue of you think you can deliver those things. Like, that's where the problem becomes, right? You have to know if you're going out there asking for that kind of money. But yeah, no, it really, your perception of value changes, your understanding of value changes. What someone finds valuable is largely up to them. And, like I said, the perception around money is one of the biggest hurdles to get through. If you're used to working for $13, $14 an hour, or $20 an hour even, it's very hard to go out there and ask someone for $1,000, $3,000, $5,000. The higher you go, the harder it gets to the mind because it just, all of it feels out of reach, right? But what happens when you go through each ceiling is you realize that it was the same exact thing as before, right? It was all in your head.
Yep.
And someone absolutely. Now, where does that ceiling end? Don't know. Haven't found it. But,
Yeah. Well, I'd love to talk about that for a second. So when we first started working together, I think you had one program that was under $1,000 right in the beginning, right? And so we had a lot of discussions surrounding this about raising prices and charging your worth. And so I know that we've touched on this a little bit here, but I'd love to kind of hear more about your experience when it came to doing that and like all the thought process between, going from a program that was like $700 up to a program that's like $1,700 and now selling programs that are $3,000. Like, what was the evolution of that for you? What did that look like for you?
Well, experimenting, trial and error was a lot of it. But the thing is again, realizing who and what I was asking, and my perception changed of what a lot of money was, right? Mm-hmm. So for me at the time, I didn't have a whole lot of responsibilities. And this gets into my main mantra, which is I believe pressure is my greatest asset. I don't believe everybody works that way. But for me, as you've seen, when pressure's on, I find a way, I find an answer. And there's some people that just work that way. The mindset behind it really was, momentum is another big issue, a big part of it. So you get a few sales and you're doing well and everybody's telling you how great you are and you're putting out these amazing dogs and everything. Well, you go a little higher and then that goes well. And then you go a little higher, right? And then you think of doing different deals like, well, I could do this more in depth if I did it this way, or I could do, and so the more in depth, the more you kind of start to give yourself permission to create the programs that you want to create too. That was another thing, is like stepping back and being like, okay, wait a minute. I have this thing and it's great and all, but if I wanted to do it, like how I would just do it, how would I do it? What would I price it at? Giving yourself the freedom to kind of play with these things, right? And then you let the market decide. You let the market tell you whether they like it, whether they don't, whether it's
Mhm.
something that needs tweaking, right? And thankfully for me so far, what I've offered, most people have. Well, I don't think I have anybody who hasn't liked it. So, but you never know. Somebody might not tell you. But
Yeah. Yep.
you know, thankfully, I've had pretty much everybody pleased with the work that I've done, and I've never had an issue with someone really being like, "I'm upset with what you delivered for what you charged." I haven't ran into that yet.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. Good.
you know, so I think that it's just the other thing of it is the pressure of accepting that kind of money. That's a real thing too, right? So asking for it's one pressure, but once it's in your bank account, now you have a whole other, because now what do you do? Like, what if the
Mhm.
person asks for a return? What if, you know, you're not able to deliver? What if, like, so that starts going through your head. So no matter how confident you are, and I would consider myself a fairly confident individual in this game, you still have worry, you still have doubt, you still have fear, you know, but you realize that if you look back on all the events that you were afraid of happening, unfortunately a lot of them do happen, and you get through them, you know.
Mhm.
This time last year I had a guy give me $1,200, and that was a good chunk of change, and we did one session and he called back and he said, I want my money back. And it was largely nothing to do with me. It was that he bought a puppy that he just simply could, that him and his wife simply couldn't keep up with.
Yeah.
And he admitted that. But he wanted his money back, so I gave him his money back, and that was terrifying to me at the time, because I was sitting there 2 days prior, like, what if someone asked for their money back? And then it happened, and I
Mm.
got through it. And so my main point is generally when the worst things happen, your brain is, if you're an entrepreneur, not going to go to like a victim mindset. Your brain's going to go to like, okay, how do we solve this? How do we get out of this? How do we get a new sale? How do we, you know?
Yeah, and if you do go to a victim mindset, recognizing that and not sitting in the misery of it and going, we have to find a way to kind of correct this and get out of this position. But hey, so what I'd love to talk about here for a second is, I know we were talking sales a little bit, but I want to add some value here for anyone who's listening. Ian is fantastic when it comes to doing in-person consultations and has really studied the heck out of this. So I'd love to hear kind of like the way that you structure them. Do you mind just kind of walking us through that? Like, how do you, when you get in there, like, what are you looking for? What are you thinking about? Do you have a program in mind you're trying to pitch to them? Do you figure it out as you go? Like, just walk us through your whole thought process there.
Wow, I'm not sure this will be helpful to many people, because my process is probably like not a process. But so I go there, I kind of ask them to refresh my memory a little bit. Oftentimes there's two people in the room, so there's one person I haven't talked to or haven't met before, so I want to try to get their perspective. It's very laid back. I'm trying to figure out whether we have the right chemistry to work together or not. Of course, top priority is identifying what they're really after, what their main goal, and what we're here for. And once we decide that, then I will pitch an offer. And do I have an offer in mind? Sometimes I do, given the information that I have going into the situation. Sometimes I don't, and I'm going to craft something on the spot. I will say that if you're going to craft something on the spot, more times than not, the first time or two that you do it, you will undercut yourself, because that's just my experience. What I've done is, like, I've gone back and I've on the fly made something out of nowhere, and then thought about it and was like, well, yeah, that was smart, but we just made our work and responsibility way more and our pay way less. So you have to be careful of that. But no, I really do try to tailor things to the individual. When I say that, it's not just a sales pitch. I really do try to make it to where, like, we're flexible. And, a lot of people will tell me ahead of time, we got to go on vacation this week, or we have this thing going on. So I'll try to be flexible with that. And I really just try to direct the conversation. I say the hardest thing for me is to not get into a conversation like I'm just having coffee with a friend. I can get, because of my ADHD brain, I can get very off on different topics. And so one thing I would say is staying on topic, staying focused on the reason why you're there. And I would say that I've lost many, many sales because I got off on different tangents and stuff. And had I stayed focused and actually identified what the real problem was, what the emotion around the problems are. That's a big thing, right? Like understanding like what is it that's bothering these people, right? And so just staying focused and staying on task and having a question asking framework where I can kind of guide these people to their own conclusion that they need to work with us, or that they need what we're offering.
And so, yeah, we started talking about this a little bit before. And so, like you said, like question framework, right? So I think that if you're wondering what questions to ask, very simply, just think of it from the perspective of who, what, where, when, why, right? Like, who are you? You know, what's going on? You know, where are you dealing with these issues? Are they inside the home when you're on walks? When do you tend to see them? You know, why am I here? And obviously you're not just going to ask them that bland, but you want to kind of ask, if you're struggling to think of what questions to ask, that is a good way to look at it. And so what I would say is you should be doing in your sales calls or your consultations a lot more listening than you are doing talking. If you find yourself just talking and just preaching to people and trying to like impose your will on them, people are not going to feel understood. They're not going to feel like you're the type of person who can really listen to them, hear the exact problems that they're going through and fix them. So what I would say is that, you know, ask the questions to get people to go deep with you, to tell you like, why am I actually here? Right? Because if they just keep it surface level and tell you, well, you know, my dog pulls me on the leash, that may not be good enough to get them across the finish line. So ask them the next question, like, do you mind just telling me a little bit more about that? Like, why is it important for you to get that problem fixed? Well, they're either going to tell you, well, it embarrasses me in front of my neighbors, or like my mom got pulled over on the leash one time while she was walking him. I'm scared to death she's going to like break her wrist or her hip or something like that. Get them to really go deep, because like, Ian, you said something really, really insightful before. What you really want to be able to do is call back to those issues and those fears and pain points that they told you and say, wouldn't, you know, spending $1,500 now be worth the peace of mind of never having your dog getting hit by a car again? You know, like, wouldn't it be worth your dog not embarrassing you on the leash or like pulling somebody over on a walk? So it sounds like that's something that you do really, really well.
Yeah, you know, I find that I don't often have to, the more experienced I get at it though, because again, I like a big part of it is understanding who you're asking. Like, if you're asking a person for something that they have and that they're willing to part with, you're honestly, in most cases, not going to find too many objections. One lady, I'll tell you one of the wealthiest clients I have, she told me straight to my face, she goes, Ian, I don't care about the money. I'm trying to figure out whether you're worthy enough to train my dog. Can you imagine that? Like, this tough old lady, bar owner, just looks at you and goes, yeah, the money's cool, but I'm trying to figure out if you're worthy enough.
Yeah. Like questioning your whole identity.
Yeah. How's that for an objection, right? Are you worthy enough? Like, yeah, so, exactly. So, you know, I didn't take it personally. I was like, fair enough. I appreciate that. You know, I like the fact that you want to know that the person that's working your dog cares. And however I can prove that to you, I'm down. You know, if you need to talk to people, fine. If you need to see examples of work I've done, fine. If you need to watch me handle the dog in front of you, fine. Like, whatever we need to do to make you feel at ease, and that this process is not going to be detrimental, it's going to be enhancing of the dog's life, I'm all about. And the thing is, if you're truly authentically that person, not very many people are going to look at you and be like, bullshit. You know what I mean? Yeah. So like, the thing is a lot of people, that everybody's different. Everybody's looking for something different. If you would see this lady's house, you would know that she does not give a hoot about money. Like, that's not a relevant factor to her, right? But there are people who go out to her house and be like, well, $1,000 maybe, you know, like, because they wouldn't understand the way she perceives it, right? Meanwhile, this lady's about to go loan $13K to whoever for whatever, right? Like, it's just, so people have to reframe who they're asking. That's the big thing, is like, well, I got 10 no's. Well, yeah, but who'd you ask, right? Like, it's a relevant part of the equation. Now, that said, there are people who will surprise you. I've had people who I did not think could afford a program with me that absolutely did afford a program with me. So I say assume nothing, but if you get no's, you know, kind of consider the relevant factors that you have to work with.
Exactly. Yeah, because I think that anybody who really wants to do something is going to find a way to do it, especially if you make it accessible to them, right? So different payment plans, different payment methods, financing, all that stuff. Because, I always use this analogy, but certain things in life are non-negotiables and you just have to have them, right? Like a car most of the time, right? Unless you're in a major city and you can use like public transit, but most of us want to have a car, right? So if the transmission goes bad on your car, you're going to find a way to either fix that or get a new car. You're not going to be like, oh, guess I'm just never going to have a car again, right? So the thing is like people usually don't have $20,000 sitting in their bank account to just go out and buy a car cash. So they'll have to find ways to get creative, to save money in certain places to pay for it, right? And so it can be the same thing with this. If somebody really wants to do this and feels like they need to do it, we can make it accessible to them and they'll be able to kind of get that deal across the finish line.
Exactly. It's all about figuring out the details, right? Like really not being afraid to ask the hard questions. Because sometimes you don't want to push. Sometimes you don't want to feel like you're being rude or something, but you're not. If you're asking from a genuine place and you're trying to really help people, and that's just not something I've ever struggled with. I've always genuinely wanted to help people. So once I understood that money and helping people are correlated, that made it easier for me. I was able to break through the wall and be like, okay, I can ask a decent amount because I know I'm going to take this money and go do good things, right? Like, I mean, in the time that we've been working together, I've obtained 2 dogs, right? 2 dogs that were about to lose their home. How would I have supported them if I had not asking for more? How would I have supported my kids? How would I have supported this, right? So it's like, if you're going to go, the whole point of money is for it to flow, right? Flow from one person to another. No one holds on to money forever. So like, if you're going to someone and you're giving them something legitimate and authentic, and they're giving you money and you're taking that money and you're going and propelling the ability to deliver that authentic thing, how is that bad? How are you doing something bad, right? How are you a greedy person?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really, really good way to look at it. I mean, and I think it's a really healthy way to look at it, which is, again, I think a lot of us, when we first get into business, we have a moment where we go, holy shit, I can't believe someone's actually paying me to do this. I can't believe someone's going to pay me $1,000 to do this, right? But we're not pulling the wool over people's eyes here. Like, this is, the market is set. People are charging $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 for board and trains, right? So you charging $1,000, $1,500, $2,000, $3,000, like, you're not so far and beyond what other people are doing. And so, just be cautious of like the mindset of like, I can't believe people are paying for this, and feeling like on a certain level, you're getting away with something, and have more the mindset of what you're saying, Ian, which is like, this is a transfer of value. Like, the value I'm getting is like, I'm getting money in return for this, but they're getting the value of like life-changing, life-saving advice in certain regards.
Well, there's 2 things I want to say. One is, if you're someone who's at a low price range right now, really enjoy the climb up. Really enjoy that, like those wins when you go out and you go to the next level. Because as you get higher and higher, that high of going to the next level, if you're an adrenaline seeker like me, as I've learned, it's not as big of a rush. Like my getting 1,200 for the first time was a way bigger rush than getting 3,250 for the first time. Like, there's something about breaking those early ceilings that are really, really fun and really enjoyable, and just great moments that you'll look back on that they were awesome. So first thing I would say is, really enjoy those moments. The second thing I'd say, I forgot. So there's my.
He'll come back to you. Yeah, that's great advice, though. But hey, while that comes back to you, I think what I would love to talk about here is, I think you've given a ton of value here when it comes to doing consultations, mindset around money, all that stuff. But what I'd love to hear about is kind of just like your experience, like working with us, and like what it was like before we started working together and what it's like after. And I'll never forget, like, one of the best compliments I've ever gotten was from you. And you said to me one time, you were like, I feel like I have 2 different businesses. I have like the business that existed before we started working together, and then I have like the business after we started working together.
They're definitely different eras. So first thing is, I am a guy who is 100% about camaraderie and loyalty. And you right off the bat, just someone I was like, I want on my team. I don't care what he costs. I don't care anything about that. Like, this is the guy I want to work with. And from the beginning, I just have always been very set that like, this is my team. And you've always treated me like a teammate. If I asked you, hey, dude, could you please meet with me once a week or something like that? And I know you maybe, I don't know if you're doing that with everybody still or what, but like, I mean, everything I've ever asked of you, you've been more than happy to deliver. Whenever something's gone wrong, which maybe it has in the account once or twice or something like that, we've always found a way to negotiate and make it reasonable for both sides. And it's just largely been nothing but ups and wins and success. You know, like there are hard times. Like there's times where the leads don't fly in when you want them to. There's times where you're getting more no's than you want to. But at the end of the day, we always seem to win, right? And that to me is what matters, is having a team that I know I can call on. I know that if I text you and say, yo, I need you right now, like you're there, right? So to me, that's an irreplaceable team. And I think it's worth mentioning that my girlfriend works for one of the biggest digital marketing agencies, and I still chose to go with you because I have that camaraderie with you, because I have that like chemistry. And you've, you know, not just the ads, dude, but like sales wise, and the if you don't know Kevin, he's a master at talking people off the ledge. He should, his day job should be like suicide prevention or something. Like he really should. He's that good. And
I appreciate that, man.
I've learned a lot from you sales wise. I mean, just like questions that I've had that I didn't know the answer to, or perspectives that I needed shifts on. And then just as any good teacher, you're also very good at stepping back and allowing me to come to my own conclusions in my own time. Sometimes I've gone, oh, dude, I don't know if I want to do it that way. And you're like, all right, cool, roger that. Go give it a shot. And, you know, like, that's beautiful about business, right? Is we always get to find out who's right. Like we always get to, in the end, the result's going to show, right?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's been night and day working with you. I always wondered what it would be like if I had a good marketing agency behind me, and then one day I woke up and was like, oh, I have a good marketing agency.
Yeah.
So it's been great, and I imagine we're going to dominate for many more years, and this thing's just going to keep growing.
I appreciate you saying that, man. Yeah. And I mean, dude, it's been incredible, like watching your journey, because not only have I seen you be able to like make more money, but I've seen you able to like grow as a dog trainer, like take on cases that like really challenged you and come out on the other side of that with like ecstatic clients. And like the whole thing with sales. I mean, I think a lot of times people think that like you either have the personality for sales or you don't, right? And sometimes like you do have somebody who's a gregarious person, or they are very extroverted, and it does come more naturally to them. But, you know, that doesn't need to be the case with everybody. It is a skill that needs to be honed and learned. And I remember, I'll never forget, like you coming to me one day and be like, hey, I'm ready. Like, I'm ready to really crack this code and figure out like how to do this. And you just started studying the hell out of it. And yeah, you and I started meeting like once a week to talk about everything. And sometimes we get off on tangents and don't talk too much about sales, but
let's be honest, far majority of the time, but like,
yeah, exactly. But the truth is, man, it's like you have what it takes to be an entrepreneur and a business owner. And I think what that really is like drive, self-belief, and grit. Because when it comes time that like things get tough, to not just be like, this whole thing's going to hell, doesn't work, I knew it wasn't going to work. Like you just have the mindset of like, I'm just going to figure this out. And I definitely think that comes from your background of mixed martial arts and fighting.
I think so. I think that a fighter's mindset is always to solve the problem, never get out of the situation, which sometimes is to their detriment, and why we have referees and people to save them from themselves. Right. You know, you have to be a certain kind of crazy to do this, just depending on what level you want to do it at. And I'm pretty competitive. You know, a lot of this past year has been kind of trying to decide how competitive I want to be. Am I good just having a family and having the family time and everything? Like, what is my priority, right? And so what I'd say to people out there is you can see some pretty big numbers in these companies, 100,000, a million, whatever, right? you're not on the internal side of that. You don't know what those people are keeping. You don't know what's going out. You don't know anything. You just see a flashy number, right? So if you can get, and you and I've talked about the magic number, and so for me it's 10K because it's zeros, but for you, you said 8,000 something. I forget what number it is.
Yeah, 8,400 is about your about your six-figure business.
Yeah, if you can take home $8,400 a month in this modern climate, and you know, I've got 2 kids, I got a family, I've got 4 dogs and stuff, and I live a pretty comfortable life in this era right now where I'm at. So if you can do that, I think that's pretty good. For me, I am competitive. I do kind of want to take over the world at times, but then there's times where I get reminded that I am a family guy and I have to have time for that and stuff like that. So trying to find the balance of what you really want to do can be difficult, because you start out thinking you want to be a major player in an industry, and then find out maybe that's not what you want. Maybe you know, and so I would say to people, like, just be honest with yourself, like let the journey kind of reveal to you what it is you actually are after. And for me, you know, right now I've got a great team behind me. I've got great people. I got you, I got Tara, I got my girlfriend, I got, you know, all sorts of stuff. And so the next step is probably building a team, right? Like probably building people and going to war that way. But yeah, that's where I think I'm going to take things from now. And I just wish anybody who's watching this luck. And if you're that guy who's in their parents' bedroom and you have no idea how it's going to happen and everybody's doubting you, just want you to know that you're eventually going to prove them wrong. You know, like you're eventually going to win.
That gave me goosebumps, dude. I love that, man, because I feel like so many of us either literally or metaphorically have been in that situation. You know, and I'll never forget, like a couple of years ago, you know, COVID happened and I had to move back in with my parents as like a 30-year-old man, you know, and I really had to take a long, hard look at myself in the mirror. And I had to go, like, what do I want? Am I going to sit here and go, like, I got screwed by the world. You know, I can't believe this happened. I got everything taken away from me because we had, you know, I owned a different business at that time. Or can you look at it as an opportunity and go, you know what, this is an opportunity to reinvent myself. And so I'm not saying this to pat myself on the back. It's just kind of like, this is the crossroad that we all face at a certain point in our life. And it sounds like it doesn't sound like, I know we've had many discussions about this where you're sitting there, you're looking at other people, you're looking at other people's businesses going like, what are they doing? I'm not. And, you know, you just never know what's going on behind the scenes. I've talked to people who, you know, they own businesses where they're making $40,000 a month, but they only take home 3 or 4K at the end of the month. Right. So it's never, the grass is always greener, and it's never how it seems. Right. So just keep that in mind. Focus on what you can focus on. Put one foot in front of the other every single day. As long as you can rest your head on the pillow every single night going, I did everything I could do today to move this business forward, you're going to succeed.
And by the way, you won't feel like you did everything you could do. No matter how hard you work, when you rest your head down, you're going to be thinking of things that you could have done. So like, I think that's kind of a mental trick, right? I remember early on Gary V's videos would be like, if you work for someone else, you're not an entrepreneur. And at that time, dude, this is how literally I took it. I worked in Arby's, and I think, well, back to the Arby's. The truth, how that story ends, is I wrote, "Fuck you, I quit on the schedule," and I never came back. That was the end of the story in the Arby's era. So like that was it. I was like, all right, I guess I'm an entrepreneur. So that was it. And you know, there were many years of people being like, what are you gonna do? How are you gonna do it? How are you gonna be successful? All this stuff. And so like that's what I'm saying. It's just like, dude, if you're that person and you're fighting with everybody, like just understand they don't understand. Right. Like you will win eventually, as long as you're doing the right things and really taking steps. And sometimes it feels like you're not. Sometimes there are days where you're just going to have a week and not a whole lot goes on, and you know you're lost kind of. Like as long as you keep your target vision, as long as you keep what you want in that target and moving towards it, even if you lose a week, you lose a month, you lose 3 months, like you can still get there. And like I said, for me, you know, I got this idea when I was 19, and from 19 till 30, I didn't make a dime. I mean, I tried to talk to people. I didn't understand sales. I didn't understand the pillars that I needed to be successful, right? And if I could go back and mentor myself, I certainly could have been. because if I had just told myself the answers, I would have known them. But sometimes you have to learn through experience. And so I just, like I said, deeply empathize with the people coming up. I hope you guys win. I hope you guys get, the knowledge and stuff. And there's a whole community here. Kevin's created the dog training community where there's tons of videos like we're making right now of people who have walked that path. And if you need any reassurance that you're on the right one, I would say go watch any of those.
Yeah. And I'm sure Ian would be happy to chat with you because I feel like you're pretty much connected with everybody in the dog training world. So
yeah, anybody who wants to send a message, I'm here, man.
Yeah.
Like, I'm happy to talk to anybody. Yeah. If you can take value from my journey, hey, I have one lady right now who I was helping a bit, and I think she's decided she's going a little bit different of a direction, so she might be a little irritated with things that I say. And you know what? I don't take it personally. I'm happy. I'm happy that she found the direction that she's going. I hope that she's able to take things from our discussions and stuff. And so whoever you are, if I can help you in any way, I'm here, man. Like if I have a resource or a coach or something like that, I there's no secrets with me.
Yeah. I think that's awesome. I mean, I think that pretty much just answered the last question I always like to wrap up every interview with, which is just, if you could give advice to somebody who's in your shoes or the shoes you were in, a year ago, what would you give to them? And I just want to point this out. I mean, Ian is a perfect example of what, just dedication and hard work looks like, because you're looking at a guy right now who, when we first started working together, we were trying to get to a point to make $5,000 in a month in some months, right? Yeah. And now you're literally at a point where some days you make $5,000 worth of dog training, right?
Yeah. And I do have an answer to that last question. I would say if I had one thing to say to anybody, it would be tunnel vision. Like keep tunnel vision. Like if this is what you want to do, if you're coming from a background where a lot of people are doubting you and you don't like to a point where everybody in your world thinks it's impossible or unrealistic, like have tunnel vision. Go get around people who are doing it, talk to people who are doing it. And if you can get tunnel vision and truly believe that's who you are and what you're supposed to be doing, you will get there. So tunnel vision, that's my advice.
Yeah, that's beautifully said, man. Sometimes you need to kind of like hide away, focus on yourself, and like just have a season of your life where that's all you're doing.
Yeah, one of my good training friends, he's a shout out Christopher Alconton. He's a wonderful trainer in New York. He said to me, I'd rather disappear and come back like a Jedi, like Luke Skywalker. Because he's like, I'd rather go away and train and come back like as a super powerful Jedi.
Yeah. No, I love that, man. I think that's kind of like what I was thinking about too. Like, I think that's awesome. It's a great analogy. And sometimes you really do need to do that, and keep in mind that sometimes you don't need to tell everybody about what you're thinking or doing, right? Because you don't need that negativity creeping in from friends who don't understand what it's like to run their own business, or family members who just they think they have your best interest at heart and they want you to play it safe, go get a job. And so, sometimes it is better to keep these ideas to yourself and then just show the world later on, like, I had this vision, I built this. And instead of trying to get, all the feedback and reassurance from other people that may just never give it to you.
Yeah. Two things on that. One, don't have the 1,000 conversations. All right. They're going to go exactly the same way. So don't go to that person and think that you can, by saying it differently or presenting it differently, have a different conversation. It will not work. It will end the same exact way every time. The second thing, why am I having such a hard time forgetting?
I was going to say, are you?
I can't remember the two things today, apparently. No, I don't know. I don't know what the second thing was. But anyways, absolutely. First one, don't worry about the conversation. Don't have 1,000 conversations with these people because they're not going to understand. They're never going to understand. And you just have to kind of follow your path, like I was saying. Yeah, exactly, man.
Well, listen, I mean, I've taken up a lot of your time today already, but I'd love to just kind of end it with this. Is there any advice that you would, anything else you want to plug, or any advice that you kind of want to leave people with here before we end the call for today?
Your reality is not reality. Like what you think is possible, what you think you can do is likely not anywhere close to the sphere of what actually is possible. So, I'm sure that that's even the same for me right now. I feel like I've kind of done it. I've kind of made it. I proved my haters wrong. All the people, oh, that's the second thing. They're never going to give you the credit. So when you get there, when you prove them wrong, they're just going to say they believed in you the whole time. So don't be surprised by that either. But, that's what I would say is, I feel I'm at a point where I feel like I accomplished what I set out to accomplish, which was originally to make a full-time living at being a dog trainer. That was impossible. There were laughs all around, So now that I've done that, it's setting the next goal, setting the next goalpost. And so that's something I would say too, is you probably will eventually set your sights way, way higher than what you think you can, because when you get to the point where you achieve your major goal, you're going to be left with the dilemma of like, okay, now what do I do? And if you shot if you kind of undershot in the initial phase, man, you missed out, because that's a powerful phase when you're in that inception phase where you get this idea and you're like, this is what I want to do. That is the most steam you will have in your career, is those early stages where it's just passion on fire. So use that wisely, and don't be afraid to ask for far, 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 far more than what you think you can obtain.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing advice, man. Very cool. Well, listen, man, let's leave it here for today. We'll have to do another call like in the future, talk about like all the growth that's going to happen between now and then. But yeah, man, Ian, I appreciate it, man. This is, like I said, this is a long time coming. So I really appreciate you joining me here today, talking all about this. I know this is going to help some other trainers out there. So yeah, guys, really don't be hesitant. If you have any questions, drop them down below this video in the comment section, and we can address any questions you have there. I'm sure Ian would be happy to jump in as well. And like I said, I mean, this is one of the nicest guys I've ever met in my entire life. Somebody who's somebody who's always looking to help. And I know that you had a unique experience coming up in the dog training world, and so you want to give back. So I highly encourage you guys. I'm really setting you up here, Ian, for a ton of people to message you. But reach out to him. See, I'm sure he'd be happy to walk you through and tell you any secrets that he's learned along the way.
Like I said, I've had so back you people. I'm happy to. Would you just start the recording over? I don't know.
Yeah, so we got kind of choppy there at the end here. So
well, we had a good hour or so.
Yeah, we almost got there without it breaking up. Well, listen, man, I really appreciate it. We'll have to do another interview again soon. And yeah, man, we'll talk soon, okay?
All right, brother. Take care and have a great day.
You too.